here and joining all of us here. Well, today, one of the most important topics that I have to present all of us is this topic here, co-creative learning and applied coaching in educational leadership. So I have an opening question to ask all of us here. How many of you here are coaches? Okay. How many of you think you are coaches or you want to be a coach? Okay. Well, one of the most interesting things that I've been experiencing over the last several years was this idea that coaching is becoming more and more democratized around the world. The shift from just traditional way of lecturing, teaching, to facilitating, and now the idea of coaching to enrich learning and education has bring learning to a whole nother level. Right, so today I'm going to present something really interesting for you to consider, and how hopefully through this presentation you gain some better insights of what coaching can do for educational leadership. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so this is a little bit of me. I'm Jedi. You can call me Jedidiah as long, Jedi for short, and I'm from Singapore, a little tiny island in the Southeast Asia, having spent a couple of years traveling around the world, sharing what coaching can do for leaders, for educators all around the world. It's been a really tremendous experience. So over the last several years, we've been stuck in this pandemic, so most of us are doing a lot of engagement online. And now, what a great privilege we have to be here, present, live in person. All right, so next slide, please.
Mr. Koh?
Yes.
The clicker is
Oh, the clicker is here, great. I love this. Finally, we have clicker, right? So my company is called Coaching Changes Lives. I remember one time I was reading a particular book. It's called Teaching Changes Lives. And that book kind of revolutionized my ideas and concepts of what teaching and coaching can do. So I named my company Coaching Changes Lives. We've been impacting the world around. And our mission is to develop individuals into high-performing teams for organizations that are built to last. Okay. So a little background, and so over the last several years as well, I've been inspiring different communities around the world, and for me, one of the most exciting things is to share culture, inclusivity and diversity around the world. A little bit about me, this is just a short write-up, but more importantly, it's about today's topic, on co-creation. One of my favorite topic to go to whenever someone asks me, say, Jedi, what's something that's on your heart all the time? I said co-creation. What exactly is co-creation? So I'd like to start off with this one question here. What's the obligado of educational leadership? So when we see this word, oh my God, what on earth is this word? Well, I enjoy music a lot, and I play music. I do a lot of singing, song composition, and one of the most interesting things in music as well as music composition is this essential element in the music track. It's called obligado. What is that missing element that cannot be missed in learning in education? And that is this one thing, co-creation. What do we mean by co-creation? Have you ever wondered, why is it that people find it so hard to take ownership of their learnings? Why is it so hard to inspire not just young people, but even adults to take what they've learned in the workspace, at home, or even in conferences like this, and really apply it? And why is it that we have become so passive in terms of what we need to do, what we need to learn? And it's almost as if we have to inspire, we have to do so much, and from the end of the educator, it feels that we have to do so much to get that person moving forward, to get that person to learning. And one of the missing elements I find, it's because of this idea of co-creation. We have not partnered our learners, we have not partnered our students to get involved in the learning process, to get involved in describing the outcomes, to get involved in describing how they like to learn, why do you want to learn this, and what will expand the horizons for them. So I'm going to spend a little time to explain to all of us, what is it like for the next generation of leadership? And one of the things that I found really, really important, not just leading the next generation, but also educators, students, even adults as well, is this idea of coaching. Now, many people ask me, Jedi, what on earth is coaching? Is coaching just something, a task, a tool? Is it just advising people? Well, the idea of coaching, it's not just telling someone what to do. Coaching, it's not just also about questions. Someone came to me and said, Jedi, you know what? I've heard coaches are just all about asking questions. And it's just questions after questions after questions. That's not true. Coaching, it's more than just questions. Coaching has the power to change lives. And coaching has the requisite power to create true inward transformation. So think about this. What if today, from this conference, from interactions with your peers around here, one thought, one idea, one question, one statement, one observation, one reflection can inspire something on the inside of us, can create a little alignment, can create a little sense of congruence, or a little spark of idea that can revolutionize the way we do, the way we think about things, and the way we interact with others. What if something could change like this? And that's what coaching really does. Coaching removes the fog that's in front of us and brings about the sense of clarity that we're looking for. Many people say, okay, I need to get clear before I can make the next step. But coaching, it's not about having absolute clarity. Coaching is just, hey, what is one thing that we can do to help you take the next step forward? Even if it's just a micro step, let's take the next step forward to help you move. And so, we ask the question, what on earth is the purpose of coaching? Well, coaching is to inspire learning agility. Coaching is to inspire learning agility. People often ask, they say, hey, what is the one thing that I can do to identify leaders of tomorrow? To identify leaders of tomorrow, I want to identify individuals who have the requisite learning agility within them. That heart, the spirit of teachability, the heart to say, hey, you know what? I want to learn, I want to grow. It's not just having the same status quo again and again and again, but having that spirit of learning. And you see, this is the cutting edge that separates us from just ordinary leaders to great leaders. So let's ask everyone here, how many of you are great leaders here? Look around. So many hands. Well, how many of you believe you are good leaders? Okay, just a couple of hands. How many of you believe you are leaders? Several more hands. How many of you will never raise your hands, even if I ask you to raise your hands? Great. After lunch crowd, it's always hard to inspire people. Now, people often ask me, Jedi, I want to be greater. I want to be great. I want to be great. And I asked them one question. I said, hey, what do you have to do to be great? The idea that we have to do something to be great comes from a false premise. What if today we realize that greatness is not what we do? It's not an idea of going from good to great, but the idea that, hey, you know what? Greatness is a state of being. Greatness is not a state of doing. Too often, we measure greatness in terms of what we do, how much certifications we have, what qualifications we have, how much we've inspired. But when we realize greatness is not what we do, but who we are, and it's a state of being, then perspective change. We're able to see the goal within our students. That little child over there by the corner, antisocial, nobody knows him, he's very quiet, he's not interactive with anyone, but there's greatness inside. That person at the corner, far end, nobody sees him in the shadows, but there's greatness inside. In our workspace as well, our peers, there's greatness within. The role of the coach is to unravel the greatness within, to unravel the potentiality that's really there. You see, coaching, it's not about trying to make someone great, but coaching is about unraveling the greatness that's inside, the latent potential. When a child is growing up, how many of you have children? Yeah? Do you say that your child, how many of you believe your child is the greatest thing that ever happened to you? And why is it that we believe that we are not great at all? You see, because parents see this. Parents see beyond who the child is. Parents see the child for the greatness that they are. And how about us as educators? If we don't see our learners and the full potentiality within them, who is going to see? Who's going to have the hope for them? Who's going to hope with them? You see, hope never disappoints. But if we have the chance to inspire them, imagine what change we can create. So therefore, one of the interesting things that I began to realize, talking to leaders, educators around the world, is I asked them, hey, what is one of the greatest pitfalls? And I've narrowed down to these 8 different pitfalls. Number one of the top few, it's always a lack of ownership of learning. They say, hey, you know what? I find that my people are not learning. They're not taking ownership. I have to think about the lesson plan. I as the educator, I'm thinking of the lesson plan. I am the one designing this. I am the one doing this. I'm going from pedagogy to andragogy to geragogy to huatagogy. Oh my goodness, all those different terms. And the poor student in front of me have no idea what I'm doing. Right? So have we become educators of models and frameworks than educators who are transforming and truly transforming lives? That's one. How do we inspire ownership? Number 2, learning seen as a task or a chore. It feels almost as if, I'm made to learn again. That sense of languish, the sense of lamentation, to enter the workspace to learn again. And third, the mindset or the fixed mindset of learning and development. For too long, we have often think that, hey, learning and development is something that we do. We have to, we as an adult, we have to learn and learn and learn. But have we grown from a place of lifelong learning to, for that being a task, a fixed mindset? Oh, it's all about lifelong learning. It's almost as if like a mantra that we say, but are we truly living that? And fourth, learning as if as an afterthought. In organizations, I often ask them, what is your budget for this year for your people's learning? And guess what they tell me? How many of you think that, sorry? They don't know, yes, exactly. And in fact, there's one major chain of hotels, one of the competitors of this hotel chain here, that I got a privilege to have a consulting with. And I asked them, I said, how much do you allocate for your learning development during the pandemic times? They said, well, Jedi, I have no budget. I said, wow, but you are a huge international hotel chain, you have no budget for your people. Oh, well, you know what, we have lower sales, lower revenue, so we cannot afford our people to go for training. Then I said, okay, then what have you been doing over the last 2 years? I said, well, we had internal training. We get our people to train each other, but they were burnt out. So you begin to see the problems there because organizations are not prioritizing learning. Learning organizations are organizations that are innovative, organizations who thrive during uncertain times, organizations who see challenges ahead and they take it as advantage. And that's a big interesting concept here. The fifth area, culture of learning is not adopted. We say we want to have culture of learning. We say that we want to have a culture of coaching. We say we want a culture of a teachable heart and teachable spirit. But it's not happening because it always stays at the executive level, but the truncating down or the cascading down, it's never done properly. As such, what seems nice on paper, what seems nice on policy, never gets executed well. So I'm in the business of very interested in not just taking the strategies, but making it real to the last man on the ground. And I say this, I said, hey, you know what? How do I know whether your organization is a learning organization? How do I know whether your organization has true leadership? It's when I entered your organization, when I talk to the man on ground, when I talk to that service staff, when I talk to the cleaners, when I have interaction with them, are they carrying the same spirit of the organization? Because that is a true test of the organization. 6, right? Learning as a quick fix. Many of them say, hey, you know what, Jedi, I have this problem. I need something, I need some training, I need some additional coaching, consulting. So you see, learning as a quick fix is not going to solve problems. It's just going to bury some problems. It's just going to have symptomatic relief, but never true inward transformation. People often ask me, Jedi, how do I create behavioral change? I say behavioral change is just temporal, but inward transformation, it's when it creates lasting change. Number 7, chasing after the next shiny object. I was consulting with one of the luxury brand groups, and this chief people officer was asking me, Jedi, what's the next thing you think is good for my people? And so she told me, she said, Jedi, you know what? I have this idea. My headquarters, it's telling us to learn this new concept. We're moving away from just human capital resources. Now we're going to humanocracy. It's all about the people. Then next, I said, okay, what about next year? Next year we're going to do something else. What about the following year? Oh, I'm going to do something else. So notice, organizations are also fallen into the trap of chasing after the next interesting concepts, but never quite internalizing. Because at the management level, when we have all these new concepts integrating, downstream, everyone finds it really hard to accept and embody this new change. Right? So change at the top has ripple effects at the bottom. And also, finally, solutions versus solutioning. There's a huge world of difference between just giving solutions and partnering for solutioning. So how do we solve this? Well, it begins by this learn. I call this the 5 elements of learning agility. This learn, it's something really, really interesting. And when I was thinking about, hey, you know what? How do we help the people or educators to not fall into this trap? Well, they need to apply this learn. Let's go through a little bit more. First one, the lenticular vantage points. I said, what on earth is this lenticular vantage point? Well, I was in the Air Force, flying around planes for many years. And one of the interesting things that I found was this. The lens by which I saw the world change whenever I change altitude. And it's not just changing altitudes, but also the position of my aircraft relative to the ground. If I'm in the opposite side of the world, I'm at high risk. If I'm pulling the jet, I may crash into the ground because I'm not seeing the altimeter, I'm not seeing my position relative to the ground. So the lenticular vantage point is this. How do we look at different vantage points, but yet also understanding where my position is relative to the ground? So are we moving towards high intention, or are we just scoping it down? Are we looking from perspectives of our learners, or are we just looking from our perspective as educators? Many teachers are great at teaching, but they feel one thing. They have not looked at the lens of the students. They have not adapted to the next generation of learning styles. In fact, someone tell me, said, Jada, why do you use different styles? I said, well, I'm on different platforms. I'm on TikTok, I'm on all kinds of funny things. I'm on, when Clubhouse first came out, I was on Clubhouse, trying out all new things. I have students on Discord, Twitch. Any one of you on Discord? Oh, you guys got to be on Discord. Oh, great. Any one of you on Twitch? You got to be there, So I said educators should be very curious about all these new platforms that our people are on, right? Are we curious about their world, or are we more interested in for them to know about our world? And that's the difference between being interested and interesting. Are we coming across as interesting people or interested in our learners and educators and our students? That's number one. Number two, ecology of engagement. And I call this the whole of a person approach. You see, engaging the person is not engaging just with visual elements, auditory elements, or kinesthetic. In fact, we often hear this, they say, hey, you know what, we've got to change different styles. We need to have some visual, we have some visual learners, we have some auditory learners, we have some kinesthetic learners. How many of you believe you are visual learners? Okay, how many of you believe you're auditory learners? How many of you believe you are kinesthetic learners? Okay, how many of you believe you are olfactory learners? Okay, there's one. How many of you believe you are gustatory learners? Wow, this person's multi-road. Okay, very good. Now, it's really interesting. Research has found that there's no such thing as just a pure visual learner or a pure auditory learner. We learn in everything. And it's interesting to find that we often hear students say, hey, I'm a visual learner. Hey, I'm an auditory. We're not one of each. We learn with all senses. And in fact, if we can combine all senses, things change. And the ecology of engagement is not just with the individual, but it's also with the individual and the persons, the peers. And I like what the earlier panel said about peer-to-peer learning, the interaction there, that's another layer of learning. And the third layer is organizational learning, learning across the organizational hierarchy. And the fourth layer, really important layer, it's community learning. I had the privilege of working with some of my friends in the Philippines, and I found community learning was such a great source of inspiration to the kids in the rural regions, because they don't have structures very much like in the more built-up world and built-up societies. And rural learning is such a great, interesting element. Community learning. And the fourth, societal, global learning, like what we're having here, learning across the world. Ecology of engagement. That's the second element. The third element is authentic awareness. The authenticity of us having this awareness is not just awareness building, but it's about evoking awareness. You see, we can force awareness on the child, on the student, but if they don't realize it for themselves, that realization, it's not lasting. If you recall the time when you were learning something new, and this little childlike play, and you found, wow, this thing really inspired you, this thing was exciting, that thing was really exciting, it kind of captivated your attention on it. But today, we find that learning has changed to a point where we're just forcing down awareness. You've got to learn this, you've got to learn these learning objectives, we've got to cover all those different points. At this time, you're going to learn this at this time. It feels almost so robotic and systematic that it's almost lacking the sense of liveliness and spirit within the conversation. And therefore, conversations is not just I just tell you, it's a two-way thing. Right? There's a dialectic conversation that's happening. So authenticity means not just creating awareness, but evoking awareness from within, and also partnering the individual to help them build awareness of themselves and the world around them. And the next element, really important element, it's what I call reflective professional inquiry. Reflective professional inquiry, it's not just a space where I just learn, but I need time to reflect. In schools, one thing we found really lacking is the space for reflection. We have lessons after lessons after lessons after lessons, but we never gave time for the individual to pause. The power of the pause or the silence and the space within is such a critical element in the learning process. And even for adult learning as well. I spend a lot of time teaching adults, and I found one important thing is this. If you give space for the individual to think about things, to reflect, and how to teach them how to reflect, will help them increase the assimilation of what's taught, will help them to increase the assimilation of what's applied, and will help them to truly make a difference in the things that they do. And so I kind of broke this down into a few parts. There are 4 key principles here. 1, what is spoken. 2, what is assumed. 3, what is viewed.
Sorry, the timer stopped working.
Okay, sure. And what is done? So there's 4 areas, right? What's spoken, what's assumed, what's felt, and what is done. Now, what is spoken, it's really important. How do we speak? What do we say? What is assumed? It's our thoughts. How it's felt. And how we're doing, how we're feeling, and how we're moving. And the 5th, I love to call this the net comfortableness of change. We talk about change all the time, but we don't talk about the comfortableness of change. How comfortable are we to change today? How comfortable are we to see our teachers, or our learners, our educators, our coaches doing things differently, inspiring the change. And why do I call it net comfortable with change? Because there is a delta difference from where we're comfortable with to where we want to be. So putting all these 5 elements together, lenticular vantage points, ecology of engagement, authentic awareness, professional inquiry, and also net comfortable with change will help us inspire learning. Why? Because one thing, I truly believe in this, that coaching is conversational mastery. The better we have, if you want to have true masterful conversation, is to have this engagement with the clients through the coaching process. Through partnering them, to inspire them through this thought-provoking process, and hopefully from within, we see the change happen. And it's coaching from the approach of principles then rather than models. And so I want to show you guys this very interesting thing that I created. It's called the 4 principles, the Liam 4 principles of transformational coaching. And you can think about this as you go on throughout the rest of the day. Number 1, it's listen to understand. Or listen to understand. Number 2, inquire for awareness. Number 3, align from intention. And number 4, move to progress. I have a whole article and video series on this on YouTube and on my Forbes article. So I give you some time to read that. But in conclusion, this is what I want you to do. Okay, since we are running out of time, I want to share with you one final story to kind of wrap all these things up and also applying these principles within this story. And this story is called the story of the little frog. Many years ago, there was a little frog who was found in the well. And this frog, he loves the well so much because he grew up in the well. All he saw upstairs were the stars, the day, the sky, every single day. And he was enjoying life. To him, the world was just the sky, the stars, and the sun. One day, a little bunny was hopping by the well, and the bunny saw the frog singing, croak, 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 right? And the bunny was fascinated by the sound. And so the bunny hopped over to the frog well and said, "Hey, froggy, you got to see the world. The world is so huge, it's so fun, it's so big." But the frog told the bunny and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm happy where I am. I'm comfortable where I am. The world is so happy. The world is just above me." The bunny told the frog, said, "Hey, no, you do not know what you're missing out. You don't know what you're missing out." Those words pierced the heart of the frog, and the frog began to question himself whether is he truly missing something out. And that day, the frog had a doubt that seeded within. And the frog said, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I might be missing something out." And so the frog decided to leave the well and went around the park. That day, the frog did something really interesting. And the frog says, "Hey, wow, the world has the park, the world has the sky, and every single thing there. Let me ask this question. Has the world changed? Has the world changed?" Sure, right? The world has changed. It seems like the world has changed, and now the frog is so happy. One day, the frog looked up in the sky and he saw the little airplane there. He says, "Wow, what if I could get an airplane?" And so that's what the frog did. He traveled around the world on the airplane. Has his world changed? It sounds like it, and I hear the little buzz sound, because that's the sound when the airplane is almost reaching to the peak of altitude. The frog world seems like it has changed, but actually the world has never changed, but his perspective of the world has changed. And so what are we discovering here? The story of the frog reminds us one thing, that sometimes what we say, or how we say, how we deliver, how we engage with another person will create a huge difference. Because you see, although the frog's external world seems to change from his perspective, but what is truly changing is his internal world. His internal vision of his own world has changed. When we begin to change, you see, too often we want to change behaviors, but behavior modification is temporal. Inward transformation is sustainable. And that is the change we want to happen from within inside out. Because transformation truly happens when there's an inward change. And that is the story of the frog. The transformation of our inner world happens before it manifests in the external world. And that's what true change happens through the coaching process. Okay, so that's all I have for you. And if you want to connect with me, this is my email address. You want to read some of the articles that's over here and connect with me on this QR code as well. Thank you so much.